Her car broke down in the rain. The mafia boss pulled over and said, "Get in. I'll take you home." The rain in Graybridge did not just fall. It hammered against the asphalt, relentless and unforgiving, turning the world into a blurred watercolor of slate gray and charcoal. For the residents of the city, the storm was just another inconvenience. But for Maya Lane, it felt like a personal attack from the universe. Maya gripped the steering wheel of her sedan until her knuckles turned white. At 27 years old, she felt as though she had lived a dozen lifetimes of exhaustion. Her job as a marketing assistant demanded everything she had, paying her in stress and overtime hours that barely covered the rent of her small apartment. Tonight had been particularly brutal. A deadline had been moved up. A client had screamed at her for a mistake she had not made, and she had stayed 3 hours late to fix it. She squinted through the windshield. The wipers were fighting a losing battle, slapping back and forth with a rhythmic, screeching protest that grated on her nerves. The heater had given up 10 miles back, and a creeping chill was settling into the marrow of her bones. Just as she passed the exit for the industrial district, the car gave a violent shudder. Maya gasped, her heart leaping into her throat. The engine sputtered, a wet, choking sound that signaled disaster. The dashboard lights flickered once, twice, and then died completely. The power steering vanished, the wheel becoming a heavy, dead thing in her hands. With the last of the car's momentum, she managed to wrestle the vehicle onto the narrow shoulder of the highway, the tires crunching over gravel and mud, then silence. Well, not true silence. The engine was dead, but the world outside was roaring. The wind howled, shaking the frame of the old sedan. Trucks thundered past on the highway, massive beasts of steel and light that kicked up tidal waves of dirty water, rocking her small car with their wake. Maya rested her forehead against the steering wheel and let out a long, shaky breath. She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling. The screen lit up, casting a pale blue glow on her tired face. 1 bar of service, sometimes 0. She dialed the emergency roadside assistance number she paid a monthly fee for, praying it would connect. Music played, tinny, cheerful hold music that sounded grotesque against the backdrop of the storm. "Please hold," a recorded voice said cheerfully. "All our operators are busy assisting other customers." She waited. 5 minutes turned into 10. The interior of the car was growing colder by the second, the temperature dropping rapidly as the storm intensified. She stared at the fuel gauge, which rested deeply in the red. She had meant to stop for gas this morning. She had meant to do a lot of things. Maya finally hung up the phone in frustration. She could not sit here all night. She needed to see if there was smoke, or if maybe, just maybe, it was something simple she could fix, though she knew nothing about cars. She zipped her thin jacket up to her chin and opened the door. The wind hit her like a physical blow. Within seconds, she was soaked. The rain was icy, stinging her skin as she stumbled toward the front of the car. She popped the hood, the metal slick and cold under her fingers, and stared hopelessly at the dark engine block. Steam hissed faintly, but otherwise, it was a lifeless lump of metal. She hugged her arms around herself, shivering violently. It was hopeless. She was stranded on a desolate stretch of highway miles from the nearest gas station, alone in the dark. Then, the light changed. Twin beams of white cut through the curtain of rain behind her. They were bright, steady, and blinding. Maya turned, shielding her eyes with one hand. A vehicle was slowing down. It was not a tow truck. It was a car, low and sleek, moving with a predatory grace that seemed immune to the weather. It pulled onto the shoulder behind her sedan, the engine purring with a deep, expensive rumble. It was a black sedan, polished to a mirror shine that reflected the fracturing raindrops. Maya took a step back, her instinct for self-preservation flaring. A woman alone on a highway at night did not hope for strangers to stop. She hoped for police or mechanics. The driver's side door of the black car opened. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He was thick-set, his movements sharp and professional. He ignored the rain completely, his eyes scanning the darkness, the tree line, and the empty road before landing on Maya. He did not speak to her. He just nodded toward the back seat of the vehicle. Then, the rear door opened. A second man stepped out. If the driver looked like a professional, this man looked like he owned the profession, the road, and the storm itself. He was tall, rising to his full height with an effortless composure. He wore a long, tailored coat made of dark wool that looked far too expensive to be exposed to this weather. His hair was dark, cut short and neat, though the rain immediately began to dampen it, plastering a few strands against his forehead. Dante Rinaldi. She did not know his name yet, but she felt his presence. He walked toward her, his strides long and steady. He did not hunch his shoulders against the cold. He moved as if the elements were of no concern to him. The driver spoke first, his voice rough but polite. "I can call a tow truck for you. Miss, we can have one here in 20 minutes. Maya opened her mouth to accept, to thank them and get back in her car to wait, but the tall man raised a hand. The driver fell silent instantly. The man in the wool coat stopped a few feet from her. He looked at her car, then at her. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and unreadable. He took in her shivering frame, her soaked clothes, the way her hair was matted to her cheeks. "Are you all right?" he asked. His voice was low, a rich baritone that seemed to vibrate through the rain. It was calm, dangerously calm, like the eye of a hurricane. "I am fine," Maya lied, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. "My car just died. I'm waiting for assistance." He looked at the open hood of her sedan, then back at her. "You are freezing. I am okay," she insisted, stepping back toward her door. "Thank you for stopping, but I will be fine." Every instinct she had screamed at her. Do not get in the car. Do not trust the handsome stranger with the hard eyes. Do not show weakness. The wind gusted harder, nearly knocking her off balance. A semi-truck roared past on the highway, blasting them with a wall of dirty spray. Maya flinched, turning her face away. When she looked back, the man had stepped closer. He was not crowding her, but he was within reaching distance now. He blocked the wind with his body, creating a momentary pocket of stillness. He met her eyes. His gaze was heavy, anchoring her to the spot. "Get in," he said. It was not a request. It was not a demand either. It was a statement of fact, delivered with absolute certainty. "I will take you home," he added. The words hit her with the force of a lifeline. Her mind warred with itself. Fear of the stranger battled against the bone-deep cold and the exhaustion that was dragging her down. She looked at his face. It was a hard face, defined by sharp angles and a strong jaw. But there was something in his eyes that paused her. It was not kindness. Exactly. It was steadiness. He looked like a man who said exactly what he meant. She hesitated, her teeth chattering. "I cannot leave my car," she whispered. "My driver will handle it," he said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming softer. "He will wait for the tow. You are coming with me." It was the way he said it. "You are coming with me." As if it were the only logical conclusion to the evening. As if he had decided she was under his protection. And therefore, she was safe. Maya looked at her cold, dead car. She looked at the warm, inviting interior of the black sedan. She looked at Dante. "Okay," she breathed. He did not smile, but the tension in his shoulders seemed to ease slightly. He turned and walked her to the rear door, opening it for her. Maya slid into the back seat, and the difference was instantaneous. The air inside was warm and smelled of expensive leather and something distinct, sandalwood and faint tobacco. It was quiet. The roar of the storm muted to a dull hum by the thick glass. Dante slid in beside her, closing the door and sealing out the world. Maya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly acutely aware of how she must look. She was dripping wet, ruining the pristine leather seats. She shivered violently, her body reacting to the sudden shift in temperature. Without a word, Dante shrugged off his heavy wool coat. "I am getting the seat wet," Maya managed to say, her voice shaking. He ignored her. He leaned toward her, the movement fluid and controlled. He draped the heavy coat over her shoulders. It was warm from his body. heavy and comforting. It smelled like him, clean, masculine, and intoxicating. He did not pull away immediately. His hand lingered on the collar of the coat near her neck. Then, with a slowness that made her breath hitch, he reached up. His fingers, warm and rough, brushed against her cheek. He tucked a lock of wet, dark hair behind her ear, clearing her vision. Maya froze, her eyes locked with his. Up close. He was devastating. She noticed a faint, pale scar running along his jawline near his lip, a small imperfection that made his perfect face seem real, dangerous. "You are ice cold," he murmured. Maya felt a flicker of heat ignite in her chest, a spark of attraction she did not want to admit to. It terrified her. This man was a stranger, and yet, sitting here in the dark intimacy of his car, she felt a pull toward him that defied logic. She looked at his hands as they withdrew. They were large, powerful hands. She saw the controlled tension in them as he rested them on his knees, the knuckles slightly pale. "Driver," Dante said, his voice shifting back to that cool command. "Take us to the city." "Yes, Mr. Rinaldi," the driver replied from the front. "Mr. Rinaldi." The name sounded heavy, important. Maya glanced at Dante, but he was looking out the window, his profile sharp against the passing streetlights. The car began to move, gliding back onto the highway with a surge of power. "Where do you live?" Dante asked. Not looking at her, Maya gave him her address. It was in a working-class neighborhood, a place of brick walk-ups and cracked sidewalks, far from the world this car belonged to. Dante nodded. He pressed a button on the door, and a privacy divider slid up between them and the driver. The isolation was sudden and complete. It was just the two of them now. Dante pulled a phone from his pocket. He typed a message, then brought it to his ear. When he spoke, it was in a language she did not understand, Italian, she guessed, but the tone was clipped and coded. "The shipment is delayed," he said into the phone, switching to English but keeping the words vague. "Ensure the warehouse is clear. I do not want any eyes on the transition. No, handle it." Maya shifted uneasily. The words shipment and warehouse and handle it carried a weight that made the hair on her arms stand up. She looked out the window, trying to distract herself. They were entering the city now, but not the route she usually took. The driver was navigating through the entertainment district, a place of neon lights and thumping bass. As the sleek black car rolled down the strip, Maya noticed something strange. The bouncers outside the exclusive nightclubs, the men standing on street corners in sharp suits, they all seemed to pause. They watched the car pass. Some nodded respectfully, others looked away quickly, as if afraid to be caught staring. It was a subtle ripple of deference that followed them like a wake. "Who are you?" she wondered silently. She stole a glance at him. He had finished his call and was sitting back, his legs stretched out. He seemed relaxed, yet entirely alert. His eyes flicked to the side mirrors constantly. The car turned off the main avenue and headed toward her neighborhood. The roads here were worse, neglected by the city. As they rounded a corner, the car hit a deep pothole concealed by a puddle. The vehicle dipped violently. Maya, caught off guard, gasped as she was thrown slightly to the side. Her hand flew to the door handle to brace herself. Instantly, an arm shot across the space between them. Dante's hand clamped onto her forearm, steadying her. His grip was firm, his palm searingly warm through the damp fabric of her sleeve. He held her there, keeping her from sliding, absorbing the shock of the movement. "Are you all right?" he asked again. Maya looked down at his hand on her arm. Then she looked up. He was close, much closer than before. The sudden movement had brought him into her personal space. His face was inches from hers. She could see the dark flecks in his eyes, the way his pupils dilated slightly as he looked at her. "I am fine," she whispered. He did not let go. The contact lingered. 1 second, 2. The air in the car seemed to thicken, becoming heavy and charged with electricity. Maya's pulse jumped in her throat. She saw his gaze drop, flicking from her eyes to her lips, and then back up. It was a subtle movement, but it felt like a caress. Her breath hitched. She should pull away. She should tell him to let go, but she didn't. She sat frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs, captivated by the intensity of his focus. He was looking at her not as a passenger, but as a woman. The car slowed, the moment breaking like a snapped thread. Dante's hand released her arm, sliding away slowly. He cleared his throat, adjusting his cufflinks, turning his gaze back to the front. "We are here," he said. Maya blinked, disoriented. She looked out the window and realized they were idling in front of her apartment building. It looked smaller and shabbier than she remembered, especially framed by the window of this luxury car. The rain was still pouring, a torrential sheet of water. The driver killed the engine. Before Maya could move, Dante had opened his door. He stepped out into the deluge, ignoring the water ruining his suit, and opened a large black umbrella. He walked around to her side and opened her door. He extended a hand to her. Maya took it. His skin was warm and rough against hers. She stepped out and he immediately pulled her close, sheltering her under the umbrella. They stood on the cracked sidewalk, surrounded by the sound of rain. The umbrella was large, but to stay dry, they had to stand close, their shoulders pressed together. Maya could feel the heat radiating from him, a solid wall of warmth against the cold night. She was still wearing his coat. It hung large on her frame, the sleeves covering her hands. "Thank you," she said, looking up at him. Her voice wavered. It was not just gratitude. It was confusion, fear, and that lingering spark of attraction. "You saved me tonight." Dante looked down at her. The street lamp above flickered, casting shadows across his face. His expression softened. The hard lines of his mouth relaxed, and for a moment, he looked younger. He studied her face, his eyes tracing the curve of her cheekbone, the line of her jaw. It felt as if he were memorizing her. "Do not mention it," he said softly. They turned and walked to the entrance of her building. The awning provided some cover, but Dante did not collapse the umbrella. He stood there with her, lingering. Maya reached for the door handle, then paused. She turned back to him. She felt a strange reluctance to say goodbye, a desire to prolong this surreal encounter just a few seconds longer. Dante stood very still. His gaze dropped to her mouth again. The air between them crackled. He leaned in, just a fraction of an inch. Maya's breath caught. She tilted her chin up, her lips parting slightly. Then Dante stopped. She saw his jaw tighten, a muscle feathered in his cheek. He pulled back, a visible act of restraint. He looked away, staring into the dark street for a moment before looking back at her with a guarded expression. "Get your car checked," he said quietly. His voice was rougher now. "You shouldn't be out here alone like that. Not in this city." The protective note in his voice sent a warm shiver through her. Different from the cold, it made her feel safe. "I will," she promised. She realized she was still wearing his coat. She moved to shrug it off, but he stopped her with a small shake of his head. "Keep it," he said. "You are still shivering, but run inside." "Maya," he commanded gently. He used her name. She didn't remember giving it to him, but perhaps she had. Or perhaps a man like him just knew things. He stepped back into the rain. Maya watched him walk away. He moved with that same powerful grace, sliding into the back seat of the black car. The door closed with a solid thud. Maya stood in the doorway of her building, clutching the heavy wool coat around her tight. It felt like a borrowed heartbeat against her chest. She watched as the taillights of the sedan flared red, then faded into the misty distance, disappearing into the rain. She was safe. She was home. But as she turned to unlock her door, she knew that something in her life had just shifted irrevocably. The storm had brought her something dangerous, and she was not sure she wanted to give it back. The morning sun that filtered through Maya's blinds felt intrusive, a stark contrast to the shadowy, rain-soaked intimacy of the previous night. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the heavy wool coat draped over her desk chair. It was dry now, but it still carried the faint, intoxicating scent of sandalwood and expensive tobacco. It looked alien in her small, cluttered bedroom, a dark monolith of wealth and power amidst her second-hand furniture and piles of paperback novels. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, She felt the phantom sensation of the car's heated leather seat, the warmth of the cabin, and the weight of Dante Rinaldi's gaze. "Get in. I will take you home." The command replayed in her mind on a loop. It should have been terrifying, getting into a stranger's car on a deserted highway, but it hadn't been. It had felt like the safest place in the world, and that was the problem. Maya dragged herself to work, her body moving on autopilot while her mind remained fixated on the man with the scar on his jaw. During her lunch break, she sat in her cubicle, gnawing on a granola bar, and did something she knew she would regret. She opened a search engine and typed in the name, Dante Rinaldi Graybridge. She hit enter. The results populated instantly, and Maya felt the blood drain from her face. The first image was a grainy photo of Dante leaving a courthouse, surrounded by lawyers. He looked exactly as he had the night before, impeccable, stony, and terrifyingly composed. But it was the headlines that made her stomach twist into a tight knot. Rinaldi Syndicate linked to Port Authority, corruption. Unsolved disappearances in Graybridge, police suspect organized crime involvement, the Shadow King. How the Rinaldi family controls the city. She clicked on an article from a local investigative blog. It detailed allegations of money laundering, extortion, and turf wars with rival factions. There were no convictions, only whispers and a long list of dropped charges due to lack of evidence or witnesses suddenly recanting their testimonies. Maya stared at the screen, her heart hammering against her ribs. He was not just a rich businessman. He was the head of a crime family. He was dangerous. The kind of man who had people killed. The kind of man who lived in a world of violence she had only read about in books. And yet, she remembered the way he had stepped out into the pouring rain to hold an umbrella over her. She remembered the gentle, almost reverent way he had tucked her hair behind her ear. You shouldn't be out here alone like that. The cognitive dissonance was dizzying. The internet described a monster, a cold-blooded kingpin. But the man who had driven her home had treated her with a quiet, protective respect that no one else ever had. I should throw the coat away, she thought. I should block the number on the card he gave me. But she didn't. She closed the browser window, her hands trembling, and went back to work. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, Maya felt frayed. She needed normalcy. She needed to be grounded in her real life, not the noir fantasy she had stumbled into. She met her best friend, Kara, at a cafe downtown called the Gilded Bean. It was a step up from their usual haunts, a quietly upscale place with velvet armchairs and low lighting. Popular with the business crowd, Kara was already there, waving frantically from a corner table. "You look like you saw a ghost," Kara said as Maya sat down, sliding a latte across the table. "Or a very hot ghost. Spill." Maya hesitated. She wanted to tell Kara everything, but the words stuck in her throat. Saying it out loud made it real, and if she said it out loud, Kara would tell her to run. "My car broke down," Maya said, sticking to the safe truth. "I had to get a tow. It was a nightmare." Kara launched into a sympathetic monologue about mechanics and the unfairness of the universe, and Maya let the familiar chatter wash over her. It was soothing. It was normal. Then, the atmosphere in the cafe shifted. It was subtle at first. The chatter at the nearby tables died down. The barista stopped grinding beans. The two servers by the counter straightened their spines, their faces tightening into masks of professional deference. Maya felt a prickle on the back of her neck. She turned toward the entrance. The glass door opened, and Dante walked in. He was flanked by two men, not the driver from the night before, but two others who looked just as sharp and just as formidable. Dante wore a charcoal suit today, the cut severe and perfect. He was speaking to one of the men in a low voice, his expression hard, his eyes scanning the room with that predator's awareness she recognized. He was clearly here on business. This was his world. Maya's breath hitched. She froze, half hoping he wouldn't see her, half praying he would. His gaze swept the room, dismissive and bored, until it landed on her table. He stopped. For a split second, the mask slipped, the hard lines around his eyes softened, replaced by a flicker of genuine surprise and something warmer. He said a few final words to his associates, who nodded and moved to a table near the back. Leaving him alone, he changed course, walking straight toward her. Kara stopped talking mid-sentence, her mouth hanging open slightly as she watched the devastatingly handsome man approach. Maya's heart was beating so hard she thought it might be visible through her blouse. "Miss Lane," Dante said. His voice was a velvet drop in the quiet room. He stood by their table, one hand resting casually on the back of an empty chair. He looked at her with an intensity that made the rest of the room fade into a blur. "Mr. Rinaldi," Maya managed, her voice barely a whisper. "Is the coffee here as good as you look? Surprised to see me?" he asked. There was a dry humor in his tone, a small quirk at the corner of his mouth that suggested he knew exactly how much his presence disrupted the room. I didn't know you came here," she stammered. "I own the building," he said simply. "Do you mind?" He didn't wait for an answer. He pulled out the empty chair and sat down, turning his body toward hers. He ignored Kara entirely for a moment, his focus solely on Maya. "How is your car?" he asked. "It is in the shop," Maya said, fighting the urge to fidget. "The alternator is shot. It will take a few days." "I can have my mechanic look at it," Dante said immediately. "He is faster and better." "No," Maya said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "No, thank you. The shop is fine." Dante studied her face. He saw the apprehension there, the knowledge behind her eyes. He knew she had looked him up. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table. "Maya," he said softly. The sound of her name on his lips sent a jolt through her. Under the small bistro table, his knee brushed against hers. It was a fleeting contact, barely a touch, but sparks snapped up her spine like a live wire. She didn't pull away. He watched her, his dark eyes tracking the flush that rose on her cheeks. There was a possessiveness in his posture, a subtle protectiveness in the way he angled himself between her and the rest of the room. Kara cleared her throat loudly. "I am sorry," Kara said, eyes wide and darting between them. "Who are you?" Dante turned to Kara, his expression polite but distant. "Dante Rinaldi," he said. "An acquaintance of Maya's." Kara looked at Maya with an expression that screamed, "We need to talk about this later," then checked her watch. "Oh, wow. Look at the time. I have to go. My cat. The vet. You know." "Kara, you don't have a cat," Maya said, panic rising. "I just got one," Kara said, grabbing her purse. "It was great meeting you." "Mr. Rinaldi, Maya." "Call me?" Kara fled the scene, leaving Maya alone with the wolf. Dante did not seem bothered by her departure. He signaled a waiter, who rushed over instantly. "Water," Dante ordered, "and another latte for the lady." "I have to go too," Maya said, though she made no move to stand. "My bus comes in 10 minutes. "I will walk you to the stop," he said. It was not a question. They left the cafe a few minutes later. The weather in Graybridge held true to form. A light drizzle had started to fall, slicking the pavement and reflecting the city lights in shimmering pools of neon and gold. They walked in silence. It wasn't awkward, but it was heavy. Maya was hyper-aware of him walking beside her. He stayed on the street side of the sidewalk, placing his body between her and the traffic. At a quiet corner near the bus stop, a group of rowdy men spilled out of a sports bar, loud and stumbling. They took up the whole sidewalk, shouting at each other, without a word. Dante stepped closer to Maya. He guided her toward the wall of a brick building, shielding her with his broad shoulders as the group passed by. Maya found herself backed up against the rough brick. Dante stood before her, effectively boxing her in. He didn't step back once the men were gone. He was close, breath-stealingly close. The street was dim here, lit only by a flickering yellow street lamp. Maya could feel the heat radiating from his chest, inches from her own. She could smell the rain on his coat and that crisp, clean scent of him. She looked up, her breath hitching in her throat. Dante stared down at her. His eyes were dark pools, searching hers, checking for fear. He must have seen the apprehension, but he also must have seen the way her pupils blew wide, the way her breathing quickened not from terror, but from proximity. "You found out who I am," he stated quietly. Maya nodded slowly. "Yes." "Does it scare you?" "Yes." His jaw tightened. He looked like he might step away, like he expected her to run, but he didn't move. His gaze dropped to her jawline, where a single drop of rain was sliding down her skin, slowly, giving her every chance to stop him. He lifted his hand. Maya held her breath. He brushed his thumb against her jaw, wiping away the raindrop. His skin was rough, calloused, but his touch was agonizingly gentle. He traced the line of her cheekbone, his fingers lingering there. The contrast between the violence she had read about and the tenderness of his hand on her face made her chest ache. "You should run." "Maya," he murmured, his voice rough. "I know," she whispered, but she didn't run. Instead, her fingers curled into the lapels of his suit jacket. She didn't push him away. Unconsciously, she pulled him a fraction of an inch closer. Dante's eyes flared. His gaze dropped to her lips. The air around them vanished. The sound of the city faded into a dull roar. There was only him, the heat of his body, and the question hanging between their mouths. He lowered his head slowly, his breath warm against her lips. He was asking for permission, waiting for her to close that final, microscopic distance. Maya's heart hammered a frantic rhythm. She wanted this. God help her. She wanted him to kiss her. She tilted her head up. Roar. A city bus thundered past them, air brakes hissing loudly as it pulled up to the stop 10 feet away. A splash of water hit the sidewalk nearby. The spell shattered. Maya jolted, stepping back, her face flushing crimson. She released his jacket as if it were burning her. Dante froze. He squeezed his eyes shut for a second, inhaling deeply through his nose, his hands clenched at his sides. When he opened his eyes again, the raw hunger was gone, replaced by a strained restraint. "I am sorry," he said, his voice low and gritty. "I will not do anything you do not want, Maya." The quiet respect in his tone hit her harder than the touch had. He had the power to take what he wanted. Men like him always did. But he was giving her the choice. "That was my bus," she said, her voice shaky. "You missed it," he said. He stepped back, giving her space to breathe, though she felt cold the moment he moved away. "I will drive you," he said. "I can wait for the next one." "It will be 40 minutes in the rain," Dante said. "Let me take you. Please." The please broke her. The ride to her apartment was quieter than the night before. The tension was different now. It wasn't the wary fear of strangers. It was the thick, suffocating awareness of two people who had almost crossed a line and were now trying to pretend it hadn't happened. Dante drove himself this time. There was no driver. Just the two of them in the intimate enclosure of the car. Maya watched his hands on the steering wheel. They were steady, capable. Hands that could hurt and hands that could hold. "Who are you?" "Really?" she asked suddenly. The question hung in the air, blunt and heavy. Dante didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the wet road. "I am exactly what you read." "Maya," he said, "you are a criminal?" "I run businesses," he said, carefully choosing his words. "Some are legitimate. Some operate in the shadows. I do what is necessary to protect my family and my interests." "That is a politician's answer," she countered, surprised by her own boldness. He glanced at her then, a wry smile ghosting his lips. "I am not a good man," he admitted. "I have done things that would make you nightmares. I live in a world where violence is a currency, and I am very wealthy." He paused, his voice dropping. "But I am not a liar. I will never lie to you." The admission scared her. He was confirming the rumors. He was telling her, flat out, that he was dangerous. And yet, the honesty was disarming. He wasn't trying to trick her. He wasn't pretending to be a white knight. He was showing her the blood on his hands and letting her decide if she could stomach the sight. They pulled up to her building. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and black. Dante kept the engine running. He didn't get out this time. He turned in his seat to face her. "Walk away, Maya," he said softly. "Go inside, lock your door, and forget you met me. It is safer that way." Maya looked at him. She saw the weary set of his shoulders, the loneliness that lurked behind the power. She saw the man who had stopped in a storm when no one else would. "Thank you for the ride," she said. She opened the door and stepped out. She didn't look back until she was inside the lobby, through the glass doors. She watched the black car idle for a long moment, as if making sure she was safe, before pulling away into the night. That night. Maya lay in bed, her phone in her hand. On the screen was the contact she had created, Dante. Her thumb hovered over the delete button. She knew she should press it. She knew she should block the number and go back to her safe, boring life of overtime and overdue bills, but she couldn't. She thought of the way he had shielded her body with his own. She thought of the thumb on her cheek. She thought of the raw honesty in his eyes when he said he wasn't a good man. She saved the contact. "I will just be careful," she whispered to the empty room. But deep down, in the place where her heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, she knew it was already too late for careful. She was curious. She was drawn in, and she was already waiting for the next time the storm would bring him back. The stress of the week settled into Maya's shoulders like a physical weight, heavy and grinding. It was not just the lingering exhaustion from the overtime or the strange, haunting memory of Dante Rinaldi's touch that kept her awake. It was the voicemail she had received that morning from her landlord, Mr. Henderson. Due to rising property taxes and necessary building maintenance, the voicemail had said in a nasal, unapologetic tone, "Your rent will be increasing by 15% effective next month. If you cannot meet the new rate, consider this your 30-day notice." Maya had spent the entire bus ride home doing mental arithmetic, cutting corners from a budget that was already stripped to the bone. 15% was impossible. It meant no heating in the winter. It meant skipping meals. It meant she was going to lose the tiny, drafty sanctuary she called home. She walked up the steps to her apartment building, dreading the sight of the peeling paint in the lobby and the inevitable out-of-order sign taped to the elevator doors. The elevator had been broken for 3 weeks, forcing her to trudge up 5 flights of stairs every evening. She pushed open the front door and stopped dead. The smell hit her first. Not the usual scent of damp carpet and stale cigarette smoke, but the crisp, chemical tang of fresh paint and lemon cleaner. Maya blinked, looking around. The lobby walls, usually a depressing shade of beige, were now a warm, clean cream color. The flickering fluorescent light that always gave her a headache had been replaced with a soft, steady fixture. And the elevator. The doors were polished to a shine. The yellow caution tape was gone. As she watched, the doors slid open smoothly with a cheerful ding, revealing a clean, fully functional interior. Mr. Henderson was standing by the mailboxes, looking flustered but weirdly pleased. He spotted Maya and straightened his tie. "Miss Lane," he said, forcing a smile. "Good evening. The elevator is running." Maya stared at him. "Mr. Henderson, what is going on? Did you fix all this today?" "Well, not me personally," the landlord muttered, looking down at his clipboard. "A contractor team came in this morning, paid in full. A friend of a tenant covered the costs for the building repairs. Very generous." A friend of a tenant? The blood drained from Maya's face. She didn't need to ask which tenant. She rode the elevator up, the smooth ascent feeling foreign and unsettling. When she reached her door, she saw it. A thick, cream-colored envelope was wedged into the doorframe. There was no stamp, no return address, just her name, written in a bold, angular script. She unlocked her door, stepped inside, and ripped the envelope open. Inside was a single card made of heavy, expensive stock. "You deserve better than broken things." Maya stared at the card, her hand trembling. A mix of emotions swirled in her chest, relief that the elevator worked, awe at the sheer display of power. But overriding it all was a sharp, hot flash of anger. He was watching her. He knew about the building. He was fixing her life without asking, moving pieces around like she was a pawn on his chessboard. She grabbed her phone and dialed the number she had sworn she would only use in an emergency. It rang twice. "Rinaldi," his voice answered, deep and calm. "We need to talk," Maya said, her voice shaking with the force of her adrenaline. "Now." She expected him to refuse, or to send a car. Instead, he gave her an address for a rooftop lounge in the city center called The Spire. "I will be waiting," he said. 40 minutes later, Maya stepped out of the elevator onto the roof of one of the tallest buildings in Graybridge. The wind whipped at her hair immediately. Carrying the scent of rain and city exhaust, the lounge was breathtaking. An open-air terrace with glass walls, low fire pits, and velvet seating that overlooked the glittering skyline. It was empty, save for one man standing at the far railing, looking out over the city he seemed to own. Dante turned as she approached. He was wearing a black dress shirt with the top button undone, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. He looked devastatingly handsome, which only made Maya angrier. "You fixed my building," she accused, stopping a few feet away from him. Dante didn't deny it. He didn't even look guilty. He watched her with that unnerving stillness. "I had the elevator repaired and the lobby painted," he corrected. "It was a safety hazard." "You paid my landlord," she snapped. "Mr. Henderson was practically bowing to me in the hall. "Who do you think you are? You cannot just walk into my life and start throwing money at my problems. I am not one of your employees, and I am not a charity case." Dante's expression darkened slightly. He stepped away from the railing, closing the distance between them. "I know you are not a charity case." "Maya, then what is this?" She held up the card. "You think because my car broke down and I live in a bad neighborhood that I need saving, that you can buy me?" The wind tore the words from her mouth, but Dante heard them. He stopped right in front of her. The calm mask he usually wore slipped, revealing a flash of raw frustration beneath. "I am not trying to buy you," he said, his voice low and intense. "Then why?" she demanded. "Why do you care if my elevator works? Why do you care if I have to walk up 5 flights of stairs? Because you are exhausted." Dante's voice rose, cracking with a sudden, rare display of emotion. Maya fell silent, stunned by the outburst. Dante dragged a hand through his dark hair. Looking away from her for a moment, he took a deep breath, composing himself. But when he looked back, his eyes were weary. "You remind me of her," he said quietly. Maya frowned, the anger draining out of her, replaced by confusion. "Who?" "My mother," he said. He leaned back against the glass railing, crossing his arms over his chest. He looked out at the city lights, but Maya could tell he was seeing something else entirely. "She worked herself into the ground," Dante said, his voice devoid of the commanding tone he usually used. "She scrubbed floors and waited tables for 16 hours a day to keep us fed. My father, he was not a provider. He was a drunk with a heavy fist and a loud voice." Maya took a tentative step closer, listening. "I was a child," Dante continued. "I would sit in the kitchen while she counted tips, watching her hands shake because she was so tired she could barely hold the coins. The sink was always leaking. The heater never worked. She was surrounded by broken things, and I was too small to fix any of it." He looked at Maya then, and the vulnerability in his eyes broke her heart. "I swore that when I was a man. I would never let anyone I cared about struggle like that, not if I could stop it." He pushed off the railing, standing tall again, but the arrogance was gone. "I did not fix your elevator to buy you, Maya. I fixed it because I have the money to make your life 1% easier. And I hate knowing that you are walking up those stairs alone in the dark after working 10 hours. I did it because I can—" Maya stared at him. She saw the weary boy hiding inside the powerful crime boss. She saw the trauma that drove him to control everything, to fix everything, because once upon a time, he had been helpless. Her anger evaporated, leaving behind a glowing coal of warmth. "Dante," she whispered. She stepped into his space, slowly, giving him time to pull away. She reached out. She placed her hand over his hand where it rested on the metal railing. His skin was cool from the wind, but his palm was warm. He looked down at their joined hands, staring at her fingers covering his knuckles as if he had never been touched with kindness before. He looked up, his eyes locking onto hers. The darkness in them swirled with something intense, unguarded, and terrifyingly hungry. The wind picked up, blowing a strand of hair across Maya's face. She didn't move to brush it away. She couldn't move. She was trapped in the gravity of him. Dante lifted his free hand. He reached out, not to fix her hair, but to touch her. He cradled the back of her neck, his large hand encompassing her, his thumb sliding along the tense muscle at the base of her skull. The touch was possessive and grounding. Maya's breath hitched. She tilted her chin up, her lips parting slightly. Dante lowered his head. He paused for a heartbeat, his gaze dropping to her mouth, giving her one last chance to run. She didn't run. She rose on her tiptoes. Their mouths met. It started slow, a searching, tentative pressure, a question asked and answered. But the moment their lips touched, something ignited. The restraint Dante held onto so tightly snapped. He groaned low in his throat, a rough vibration that she felt against her lips. He deepened the kiss, his mouth moving over hers with a starving intensity. He pulled her closer, his arm wrapping firmly around her waist, crushing her body against his. Maya gasped, opening to him, and he took the invitation. The kiss became a consuming thing. She felt the solid, unyielding warmth of his chest against hers, the restrained power coiled beneath his dress shirt. He felt dangerous. Yes, but he also felt like an anchor in a storm. Her hand slid up his chest, feeling the heavy, rapid thud of his heart. It was pounding just as urgently as her own. His fingers threaded into her hair, tilting her head back to deepen the angle, devouring her sigh. Every small movement, the slide of his tongue against hers, the slight tremor in the hand gripping her waist, sent a rush of desire flooding through her veins. It was overwhelming. It was electric. He tasted like scotch and mint and rain. He felt like the only solid thing in the world. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard, their foreheads resting against each other. The city sounds drifted back in, the distant sirens, the hum of traffic, but they felt miles away. Maya kept her eyes closed, savoring the feeling of his breath on her cheek. "Maya," Dante whispered. "Dante." His voice was rough, wrecked. She opened her eyes. He was looking at her with a raw wonder that made her knees weak. "Say the word," he murmured, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. "Say the word, and I will take you home. No questions, no pressure. I will drive you to your door and leave you there." He was giving her an out. He was offering to be the gentleman, to protect her virtue and her safety. Maya looked at the scar on his lip. She looked at the dark fire in his eyes. She thought of her empty apartment, her cold bed, and the way she felt when he held her, like she was precious. "I do not want to go home yet," she whispered. The truth hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Dante let out a long breath, his eyes fluttering shut for a second as if relieved. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, lingering there. "Okay." He breathed against her skin. He led her away from the railing, guiding her to a secluded corner of the rooftop terrace where a plush velvet sofa sat hidden behind a screen of ornamental bamboo. The wind was blocked here, leaving only the warmth of the nearby fire pit. Dante sat down and pulled her with him. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders, then pulled her partially into his lap. It wasn't a sexual position. Not exactly. It was intimate. It was the posture of two people who needed to be as close as physically possible. Maya's legs leaned across his thighs, her body tucked against the side of his chest. His arm rested heavy and secure around her waist, his hand splayed on her hip. They talked for hours. They didn't talk about the syndicate, or the money laundering, or the men with guns. They talked about her favorite books. They talked about the places he had traveled to before he took over the family business. They talked about music. Dante's thumb drew slow, hypnotic circles over the fabric of her dress at her hip. The motion was grounding, keeping her tethered to the moment. Their kisses grew softer as the night went on. They were no longer the frantic, hungry clashes of earlier. They were tender, slow, full of unspoken promises. He kissed the corner of her mouth. She kissed the pulse point at his jaw. It was a quiet, domestic kind of intimacy that felt far more dangerous than the passion, because it felt like a future. It was nearly 2 a.m. when Dante finally checked his watch. He sighed, the sound heavy with regret. "I have to get you back," he said quietly. "You have work in the morning. I don't want to go," Maya admitted, sleepy and warm in his arms. "I know," he said, brushing a kiss against her temple. "I do not want you to go either. but I cannot keep you here forever." He helped her up, keeping a steadying hand on her back. The spell of the rooftop began to fade as they descended in the private elevator, replaced by the sharpening reality of the street level. When the elevator doors opened into the private garage, Dante's demeanor shifted. He did not let go of her hand, but his grip tightened, his spine straightened. He looked around the garage, scanning the shadows before he stepped out. He walked her to the sleek black sedan. He opened the door for her, tucking her in before circling to the driver's side. As he pulled out of the garage and onto the quiet city street, the atmosphere in the car was warm, filled with the memory of their time on the roof. Maya rested her head against the seat, watching him drive. She felt happy. For the first time in years, she felt genuinely cared for. Then, the danger leaked in. They were stopped at a red light. The street was deserted, save for a gray sedan that rolled up slowly in the lane next to them. Dante's posture shifted instantly. He went from relaxed lover to coiled predator in a fraction of a second. His hand, which had been resting near the gear shift, moved to the door panel, fingers hovering near a concealed compartment. His eyes snapped to the rearview mirror, then to the side mirror, tracking the other vehicle. "Don't look at them," he commanded, his voice devoid of warmth. "Look at me." Maya froze, her heart leaping into her throat. She turned her head toward him. Dante's jaw was clenched so hard she could see the muscle feathering. He wasn't looking at her. He was watching the other car with a cold, lethal intensity. The light turned green. The gray sedan didn't move immediately. Then, as Dante accelerated, the other car swerved. It was a sharp, aggressive movement. The gray car cutting too close to their bumper, forcing Dante to jerk the wheel to the left to avoid a collision. The tires screeched against the asphalt. Maya gasped, grabbing the dashboard. Dante didn't flinch. He slammed on the accelerator, the powerful engine of his car roaring to life. He maneuvered the vehicle with terrifying precision, putting distance between them and the gray sedan in seconds. "Vargas," he muttered under his breath. It was a curse. He tapped a button on the steering wheel, activating the hands-free phone. "Leo," Dante said, his voice ice-cold. "I have a tail. Gray sedan. Older model. They tried to clip me on 5th and Main. Get a team to the south sector, now." He hung up without waiting for a response. He took a sharp right turn, taking a route that led away from Maya's apartment. "We are not going to my place?" Maya asked, her voice small. "Not yet," Dante said. "I need to make sure we are clean. I will not lead them to your door." The warmth of the rooftop was gone, replaced by a chilling clarity. Maya looked at Dante's profile. He was focused, deadly and distant. He was protecting her. Yes, but the wall was back up. He was the king of Graybridge again, and she was a liability in the passenger seat. They drove for another 20 minutes, winding through confusing back streets until Dante was satisfied they were not being followed. When he finally pulled up to her apartment building, he didn't turn off the engine. "Go straight inside," he ordered. "Do not stop in the lobby. Lock your door. I will have someone watching the building tonight." Maya unbuckled her seatbelt. She wanted to kiss him goodbye, but the air was too charged, too dangerous. "Dante," she started. "Go." "Maya," he said, his eyes scanning the street. "Please." She opened the door and ran into her building. That night, Maya lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling. The heavy wool coat hung on her chair. A ghost in the room. She replayed the night in her mind, the way he had looked at her on the roof, like she was the only thing that mattered, the way he had held her, tender and reverent. But then she replayed the drive home, the swerve, the name Vargas, the cold, hard look in his eyes when he reached for a weapon that wasn't there. She touched her lips, remembering his kiss. She realized, with a sinking feeling in her gut, that the articles were right. His world was built on blood and violence. Loving a man like Dante Rinaldi meant living with a target on her back. It meant swerving cars and hidden guns and men watching her, building from the shadows. "Run!" Her brain screamed. "Run before you get hurt." But then she remembered the boy in the kitchen who just wanted to fix the broken things. She remembered his hand trembling at her waist. She rolled over, pulling the duvet up to her chin, knowing she wasn't going to run. She was terrified. Yes. But as she closed her eyes, she knew she was already too far gone to walk away. The conversation had been difficult, stilted and painful. Maya had met Dante in the daylight in a neutral public park to tell him the words that felt like stones in her mouth. She needed space. She needed to figure out where the line was between her life and his, and if they could ever overlap without erasing who she was. Dante had listened with that terrifying stillness of his. He had not argued, he had not pleaded, he had simply nodded, his dark eyes unreadable, and said, "I will respect that." But respect in Dante Rinaldi's world was a complicated concept. 3 days had passed since she asked for distance. On the surface, he was gone. He did not text. His black sedan did not idle outside her apartment, but Maya felt the weight of his absence like a physical pressure. And worse, she felt the phantom touch of his protection everywhere she turned. It started with the cameras. When she came home on Tuesday, she noticed a new, sleek security dome installed in her hallway, its red light blinking a slow, steady rhythm. The next day, she saw a police cruiser parked on the corner of her street. It was there in the morning when she left, and it was there in the evening when she returned. The officer inside was not sleeping or eating donuts. He was watching her building. Maya tried to tell herself she was being paranoid, that the city was just doing its job. But the illusion shattered on Thursday evening. She was leaving her office building, her bag heavy on her shoulder, mind already drifting to the empty evening ahead. As she turned the corner toward the bus stop, she saw a man leaning against a brick wall, scrolling through his phone. He wore a nondescript gray jacket and a baseball cap pulled low, but the posture was unmistakable. It was Leo, Dante's right-hand man. He wasn't interacting with her. He was 50 feet away, just existing. But his presence sent a spike of hot indignation through her veins. She wasn't being given space. She was being managed. Maya marched across the street, ignoring the traffic that honked at her. Leo looked up as she approached, his expression impassive. Though he straightened slightly. "Miss Lane," he said, nodding politely. "Tell him to stop," Maya said, her voice shaking with anger. Leo didn't pretend to misunderstand. "He's worried about the Vargas situation." "Miss Lane, it is just a precaution. I am not a package he is shipping," she snapped. "I asked for space. This is not space. This is surveillance." Leo didn't answer, which only fueled her fire. Maya pulled out her phone and dialed the number she had sworn not to call. Dante picked up on the first ring. Maya, the sound of his voice, deep and gravelly, almost derailed her anger, but she held onto it like a shield. "Get your shadow off my street, Dante," she said, not bothering with a greeting. "I see Leo. I see the police car. I see the cameras. I told you I would keep you safe," Dante replied, his tone calm and maddeningly reasonable. "You told me you would give me space. I am giving you space," he countered. "I am not there, but I will not leave you exposed while Marco Vargas is hunting for leverage. I can respect your boundaries, Maya, but I will not gamble with your life. My life is mine to gamble with," she shouted, drawing stares from passers-by. She lowered her voice, hissing into the receiver. "You are suffocating me. You are controlling everything. I am doing what is necessary," he said, his voice hardening slightly. "For you," she said. "You are doing what makes you feel better. If you cannot let me live my life without turning it into a fortress, then we have nothing to talk about." She hung up before he could respond. Her hand was trembling. She felt a mix of triumph and nausea. She had stood up to him, but the silence that followed felt vast and terrifying. She went home, locking her door against the world. The rain started an hour later. A sudden, violent downpour that lashed against her windows. At 9 in the evening, her buzzer rang. Maya ignored it. It rang again. Long, insistent, she walked to the intercom. "Who is it? Open the door." "Maya." It was Dante. Maya hesitated, her heart hammering against her ribs. She pressed the buzzer. When she opened her apartment door, he was standing in the hallway. He was drenched. His expensive suit was soaked through, the fabric clinging to his broad shoulders. His hair was plastered to his forehead, water dripping from the ends to run down his face like tears. He looked wild, breathless, as if he had run part of the way. "You are controlling me," she said, the argument picking up right where it left off, though her voice lacked the bite it had on the phone. "I am keeping you alive," he shot back, stepping into her apartment without asking. He kicked the door shut behind him. The small living room suddenly felt microscopic. Dante filled the space, radiating heat and frustration and the smell of rain. "I did not ask for a bodyguard. Dante," Maya argued, backing up as he advanced. "I asked for a normal life. I asked to figure out who I am without looking over my shoulder every 5 seconds. You think I want this?" Dante demanded, his voice rising. "You think I want to have men watching you? I want to be the one watching you. I want to be the one walking you home. But you asked me to stay away, and I stayed away. You call that staying away? Putting a perimeter around my life? I call that love," he shouted. The word hung in the air, vibrating between them. Maya froze. Dante stopped, his chest heaving, his eyes wide as if the word had surprised him as much as it had her. The anger in the room didn't vanish, but it shifted. It mutated into something sharper, hotter. Dante stepped closer. He was so close now she could feel the heat radiating off his soaked clothes. He looked down at her, his jaw working, his hands hovering near her waist. He looked like he was in physical pain, fighting a war between the instinct to grab her and the promise to respect her. "I cannot turn it off." "Maya," he whispered, his voice rough, "I cannot stop worrying that you are hurt. I cannot stop thinking that because of me. You are in danger. If controlling the environment is the only way I can ensure you wake up tomorrow, then I will be controlling. Hate me for it, but be alive to hate me." Maya looked up at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, not fear of Vargas, but fear of losing her. She saw the desperation of a man who was used to commanding armies but was helpless before his own heart. She was trembling, but not from fear. "You are an idiot," she whispered. She closed the distance. She grabbed the wet fabric of his shirt and pulled him down. Dante didn't hesitate. He crashed his mouth against hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was sharp with frustration, with days of silence, with the terror of the threat looming over them. It was a collision. Maya made a sound in her throat, opening to him, and he devoured it. His hands finally landed on her, gripping her waist with a force that should have bruised, but only felt grounding. He walked her backward until her shoulders hit the wall. He pressed her there, his body covering hers, shielding her, claiming her. His hands slid up her back, tangling in her hair, tilting her head back to deepen the kiss. The anger melted away, replaced by a raw, aching tenderness that stole her breath. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was the only air left in the world. He pulled back just an inch, their foreheads resting together. His eyes were closed, his breathing ragged. He kept her pressed against the wall, not to trap her, but as if he needed the solid surface to keep himself upright. "I am sorry." He breathed against her lips. "I am trying. Maya, I swear I am trying." Maya reached up, her fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw, the roughness of the scar near his lip. She felt the tension leaking out of him at her touch. "I know," she whispered. Dante opened his eyes. They were dark, vulnerable, stripped of all defenses. "I have never wanted anything as badly as I want to be worthy of you," he said. "And I know I am not." "You don't have to be perfect, Dante," she said softly. "You just have to be here." She took his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. She led him away from the wall, toward the worn, comfortable couch in the center of the room. He followed her, his eyes never leaving her face. They sat down together, the space between them vanishing as they sought comfort in the simple reality of contact. They resumed kissing, but the frantic energy was gone. These kisses were slow, deliberate. They were an apology and a promise. Dante pulled her into his arms, and they sank back against the cushions. The lamp in the corner cast a dim, golden glow over the room. Shadows danced on the walls. The scene narrowed down to the silhouette of two people holding on to each other. Dante's hand came up to cradle her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with infinite reverence. Maya curled into him, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady, strong beat of his heart. They didn't need words anymore. They just needed this, the quiet, the warmth, and the surrender of the fight. Morning arrived with a deceptive peace. Sunlight streamed through the gaps in the curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Maya woke up first. She was warm, wrapped in a throw blanket, her head resting on a firm pillow that turned out to be Dante's chest. He was asleep, his breathing deep and rhythmic, one arm thrown protectively over her waist. For a moment, she felt a profound sense of rightness. This was domestic. This was normal. Then she sat up and saw the coffee table. Dante's gun holster was sitting there, next to her coaster and a stack of magazines. It was black leather, sleek and utilitarian, the grip of the weapon protruding slightly. It was a jarring, violent object in her soft, feminine space. It was a silent scream that the world outside had not gone away. She stared at it, the peace curdling in her stomach. Dante shifted, waking instantly. One moment he was asleep, the next he was alert, his hand reaching out to steady her. "Maya?" His voice was raspy with sleep. She looked at him, then back at the gun. Dante followed her gaze. He sat up, his expression hardening. He reached out and covered the weapon with his discarded jacket, hiding it from view. "I am sorry," he said stiffly. "I should not have left it there. It is not about where you put it." "Dante," she said quietly, "it is that you have to carry it at all." Before he could answer, his phone buzzed on the floor. It wasn't a normal notification sound. It was a sharp, urgent ping. Dante picked it up. As he read the message, Maya watched his face transform. The softness of the morning vanished. The lover disappeared, replaced by the dawn. His eyes turned into chips of ice, his jaw set in a hard line. "Get dressed," he said, standing up. "What is it?" Maya asked, fear cold in her belly. "Vargas," Dante said. "His crew has been spotting circling properties in this neighborhood, not just the street, the alleyways. They are looking for entry points." He turned to her, and the look on his face broke her heart. It was terror. Pure, unadulterated terror for her. "You cannot stay here. Maya, not tonight, not until I handle this." Maya stood up, wrapping the blanket around herself. "I have work. I have a life. I cannot just run away." "You do not have a life if you are dead," Dante snapped, the fear making him sharp. "Please, Maya, do not fight me on this. I have a secure location just for a few days, just until I know you are safe." She wanted to argue. She wanted to scream that this was exactly what she had been afraid of, but she looked at his hands. They were shaking slightly. "Okay," she whispered. They left within the hour. The safe house was a penthouse apartment in a high-rise downtown. It was beautiful, modern, and utterly soulless. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the river, steel appliances, and security measures that rivaled a bank vault. For 2 days, they lived in a strange, fragile bubble. They didn't leave the apartment. Dante worked from a laptop in the study, but he spent every other moment with her. They cooked together in the massive kitchen, or rather, Dante cooked, moving around the space with surprising grace, making pasta from scratch while Maya sat on the counter and teased him about his apron. They ordered takeout and ate it on the floor of the living room, watching the city lights below. They spent hours on the sprawling white couch, Maya reading while her legs rested over his lap. He would absent-mindedly massage her calves while he read reports, occasionally lifting her hand to kiss her knuckles, as if checking she was still real. It was almost perfect. It was a glimpse of what life could be like if he were just Dante, the man, and not Dante, the Rinaldi boss. But the bubble was made of glass, and glass breaks. On the third evening, Maya was walking from the bedroom to the kitchen to get a glass of water. The door to the study was slightly ajar. She heard Dante's voice, low and lethal. She froze. "We found him?" Dante was saying. "Good, I do not care what he says." He threatened her. "Leo, there is no coming back from that." Maya stepped closer to the door, her heart pounding. "No," Dante said, his voice devoid of any emotion. "Do not bring him to me. Just make him disappear. The river is high tonight. Make sure he is never found. Maya clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Make him disappear. It wasn't a metaphor. It was an execution order. She stumbled back, knocking into a side table. A vase wobbled and fell, shattering on the hardwood floor. The silence from the study was instant. Dante appeared in the doorway a second later. He saw the broken vase. He saw Maya's face, pale, horrified. Tears standing in her eyes. He didn't ask what she had heard. He knew. "Maya," he started, taking a step toward her. "Don't," she whispered, backing away. "Don't come near me." Dante stopped. He held his hands up, palms open. "I was protecting you." "You ordered a murder," she said, her voice shaking so hard the words barely came out. "You told Leo to make someone disappear. He was the one who sent the threat to your office," Dante said. "He's a soldier for Vargas. If I let him live, he comes back. He comes for you." "So you kill him?" Maya cried. "That is your solution? You just erase people? In my world." "Yes," Dante said. He didn't lie. He didn't try to soften it, sometimes. "To save the sheep. You have to kill the wolf." "I am not a sheep," she screamed. "And you—" "I cannot be with a man who plays God with people's lives. I cannot be the reason someone dies. Dante, even if he is a bad man, I cannot have that on my soul." Dante looked at her. He looked shattered. The armor cracked, and she saw the man beneath bleeding out. "It is not on your soul, Maya," he said quietly. "It is on mine. I carry the sin so you can be safe." "I don't want that safety," she sobbed. "It is blood money. It is blood safety." She turned and ran to the bedroom. Grabbing her bag, she shoved her few things inside, blinded by tears. Dante followed her, but he didn't try to stop her. He stood in the doorway, watching her pack. He looked like a man watching his own execution. "If you walk out that door," he said, his voice hollow, "I will not stop you. I will not drag you back into this." Maya zipped her bag. She looked at him one last time. She loved him. God help her, she loved him. But the image of the river, of a body disappearing into the dark water, was burned into her mind. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't do this." Dante nodded slowly. He stepped aside, clearing the path to the door. "I will still protect you," he said as she walked past him, "from afar. You will never see me, but I will make sure you are safe." Maya didn't answer. She couldn't. She walked out of the apartment, the door clicking shut behind her with a finality that sounded like a gunshot. She took the elevator down, crying silently, feeling as though she had just torn out a piece of her own heart and left it on the penthouse floor. 3 weeks, 21 days, 504 hours. Maya Lane had counted every single one of them since she walked out of the penthouse apartment and left Dante Rinaldi standing in the silence of his own making. The city of Graybridge had moved on. The rain continued to fall, the buses continued to run, and the rent at her apartment was still due, though the mysterious contractor paid for by a friend had vanished as quickly as he had arrived. Maya threw herself into her work with a desperation that bordered on manic. She arrived early. She stayed late. She volunteered for the projects no one else wanted, burying herself in spreadsheets and marketing copy so she would not have to think about dark eyes, a scar on a jawline, or the way a man's hand could feel both dangerous and safe. But the city was haunted. Every time a black sedan rolled past her on the street, Maya flinched, her heart leaping into her throat before she could stop it. She avoided the downtown district entirely. She stopped going to the rooftop bars. She took different routes home, walking quickly, eyes down, trying to make herself invisible. The nights were the hardest. She would lie in her bed, staring at the ceiling, the silence of her apartment pressing down on her like a physical weight. Her phone would sit on the nightstand, glowing faintly. Every night, without fail, she would unlock it and open her contacts. Her thumb would hover over his name. Dante, just 5 letters, but they held so much gravity. She wanted to call him, she wanted to scream at him. She wanted to hear his voice tell her that he had fixed it, that he had found a way to be the man she needed without the blood. But she never pressed the call button. She would turn the phone over and squeeze her eyes shut, trying to banish the memory of his arms around her. Then, on a Tuesday evening that felt like any other, the ghosts came back. Maya was heating up leftovers in her small kitchen when her phone buzzed. It was not a text or a call. It was a video message from an unknown number. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and picked it up, frowning. She tapped the screen. The video was grainy, shot in low light. At first, she could not make out what she was looking at. There was a chair in the center of a concrete room. A figure was tied to it. Maya squinted, leaning closer. Then the figure lifted its head, and the phone slipped from her numb fingers, clattering onto the linoleum floor. Evan, her younger cousin. Evan, who worked at a bookstore and had never been in a fight in his life. Evan, who lived 3 blocks away and came over for pasta on Sundays. He looked terrified. There was a dark bruise blossoming on his cheekbone, and his lip was split. But he was alive. He was breathing hard, his eyes darting around the room in panic. A voice spoke from behind the camera. It was distorted, deep and metallic, but the malice was clear. "You made yourself hard to reach, Maya," the voice said, "so we found someone easier." The camera zoomed in on Evan's shaking face. "Tell your boyfriend we have his leverage," the voice sneered. "You bring Rinaldi to us. If the police show up, the boy bleeds. If Rinaldi brings an army, the boy bleeds. You have 2 hours. We will send the location when you reply." The video ended. Maya stood frozen in her kitchen, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The room seemed to tilt. This was not happening. This could not be happening. Evan had nothing to do with this. He didn't even know Dante existed. They had taken him just because he was related to her, and she was related to Dante. The guilt hit her like a sledgehammer, shattering her paralysis. This was her fault. She'd brought this darkness into their lives. She snatched her phone from the floor, her hands shaking so hard she could barely unlock the screen. She didn't hesitate this time. She didn't think about morals or boundaries or the river. She pulled up Dante's number and pressed call. He answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting for 3 weeks. "Maya?" His voice was rough, urgent. "They have Evan," she choked out, tears spilling hot and fast down her cheeks. "The Vargas crew. They have my cousin." There was a pause on the other end. A silence so cold it felt like the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Where are you?" Dante asked. His voice was no longer the voice of the man who had cooked pasta with her. It was the voice of the King of Greybridge. "I am at home. They sent a video. They want you. Dante, they are using me to get to you. Stay there," he ordered. "Do not move. Leo is 2 minutes away. He will bring you to me." 10 minutes later, Maya was in the back of a speeding car, watching the city blur past through tear-filled eyes. Leo drove with a terrifying precision, his face set in stone, offering no words of comfort because there were none to give. They didn't go to the penthouse. They went to the industrial outskirts of the city, pulling into a nondescript parking garage that sat beneath an abandoned textile factory. The heavy steel gate rattled open, and Leo drove them deep inside, past rows of black SUVs and men checking weapons. The car stopped. Leo opened her door. Dante was waiting. He stood under the harsh glare of a halogen work light, surrounded by 3 other men. He looked different. The pristine polish was gone. His suit jacket was discarded on a crate. His white shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal tense forearms. He hadn't shaved in a few days, a dark shadow of stubble covering his jaw. He looked exhausted, his eyes rimmed with red, as if he hadn't slept since she left. But when he saw her, the exhaustion vanished, replaced by a fierce, burning intensity. "Maya," he said. He crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides. He looked like he wanted to grab her, to pull her into his arms and crush the air from her lungs, but he stopped a foot away. He held his hands up, hovering, afraid to touch her without permission. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, scanning her face. "Did they touch you?" "No," she said, her voice trembling. "It is Evan, Dante. They hurt him. Show me," he said. She held out her phone. Dante took it. He watched the video, his face becoming a mask of terrifying neutrality. Maya watched him watch it. She saw the moment the rage hit him. It wasn't a hot, explosive anger. It was a glacier. His eyes went dead. The muscles in his jaw locked so hard she thought a tooth might crack. He handed the phone to a man standing by a bank of monitors. Silas, his intelligence officer. "Trace it," Dante said. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried across the cavernous garage. He turned back to Maya. "I will get him back," he said. "I swear to you, I will fix this." "We have to go," Maya said, wiping her face. "They said 2 hours." "No," Dante said. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You are not going anywhere near that meeting." "What?" Maya stared at him. "I have to go. They told me to bring you. I am the messenger." "You are the target," Dante corrected sharply. "Marco Vargas does not want your cousin. He wants to break me. And the only way he can break me is through you. If you walk into that trap, I lose all my leverage. I don't care about leverage," she cried. "That is my family. Dante, I am not sitting in a safe room while Evan bleeds because of who I dated." The garage went silent. The other men looked away, pretending to be busy with their gear. Dante looked at her, his expression pained. "Maya, please, I cannot protect you if you're in the line of fire, and you cannot save him without me," she insisted. She took a step toward him, her fear transforming into a cold, hard resolve. "I know Evan. I know how he reacts when he is scared. I might see something in that video your men miss. I am not asking. Dante, I am going." Dante stared at her. He looked for the frightened woman who had run from his apartment 3 weeks ago, but she was gone. In her place was a woman who had walked through the fire and come out steel. He let out a sharp breath, running a hand through his hair. "Fine," he said, "but you do not leave my side." He turned to the table where Silas and Leo were reviewing the footage on a larger screen. "Play it again," Dante ordered. Maya stepped up to the table, standing shoulder to shoulder with the men of the Rinaldi syndicate. She forced herself to look at the screen, to see Evan's bruised face magnified. "Pause," she said suddenly. Silas hit a key. The image froze. "Look at the window," Maya said, pointing to a grimy, blacked-out pane of glass in the background of the video. "It is painted over," Leo said. "We cannot see outside." "No," Maya said, "not outside. Look at the reflection." She pointed to a faint, reddish flicker on the glass. It pulsed rhythmically. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 1, 2, 3. "It is a neon sign," she said. "It is flashing. Lots of bars have neon signs," Silas muttered. "Not like that," Maya said, her mind racing. Pulling up memories of driving Evan to his art classes years ago. "That is not a bar. It is a specific pattern. It is the old crab shack near the river. The Blue Crab. Their sign has been broken for years. It flickers just like that." Silas began typing furiously. "There is an abandoned warehouse district directly across the street from the old Blue Crab." He confirmed. "Wait," Maya said, tilting her head. "Play the audio again. Isolate the background noise." Silas adjusted some sliders and replayed the clip. Beneath the distorted voice of the kidnapper, there was a low, distant rumble, a horn blast. 2 shorts, 1 long. "That is a train," Leo said. "That is the cargo line," Maya corrected. "The passenger trains do not use that horn sequence. The cargo line only runs on the west track after 10 in the evening." She looked up at Dante. "It is the west docks," she said. "Building 4 or 5. That is the only place close enough to hear the cargo train and see the reflection of the crab sign." The room was silent for a second. Dante looked at her. His eyes were wide, filled with a complicated mix of emotions, pride, awe, and a deepening, terrified love. She was brilliant, she was brave, and she was standing in the middle of a war room helping him plan a siege. "Move out," Dante barked, breaking the spell. "Silas, get the tactical team to the perimeter. Leo, prep the convoy. We leave in 5 minutes." The garage exploded into activity. Men grabbed vests and checked earpieces. Engines roared to life. In the chaos, Dante grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her away, dragging her into a dim hallway lit by flickering fluorescent tubes. The noise of the garage faded slightly. He pushed her up against the concrete wall, his body shielding her from the view of his men. He didn't kiss her. He grabbed her wrists, his thumbs brushing the sensitive skin on the inside, feeling the frantic beat of her pulse. "You are terrifying," he whispered, his voice rough. "I am scared to death," she admitted. her voice shaking now that she didn't have a puzzle to solve. "I know," he said. He moved his hands up to cup her face, his palms warm and rough. "Listen to me, Maya. I am going to get him back, I promise you, but you have to promise me something. Anything," she whispered. "Stay in the van," he said. "When we get there, you stay in the surveillance unit. If I give the order, if anything goes wrong, Leo drives you away. You do not look back. You do not wait for me. You live. Promise me." Maya looked into his eyes. She saw the depth of what he was offering, his life for hers, without hesitation. "I promise," she lied. Dante studied her face, searching for the truth. Then he let out a shuddering breath. "I missed you," he said, the words torn out of him. "I missed you every second of every day. I tried to stay away. I tried to let you be." "I know," she said. She reached up, covering his hands with hers. "I missed you too." He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. "I am a monster. Maya," he whispered. "You saw it. You know what I do. I know you are flawed," she said fiercely. "I know you have done terrible things, but I don't need a perfect man. Dante, I need the man who chooses to be better when it counts. Be that man tonight. Save him. Save us." Dante made a sound low in his throat, a mix of a groan and a sob. He closed the distance. The kiss was not like the ones before. It wasn't hungry or angry. It was slow. It was deep. It tasted of salt and desperation. It was a seal on a contract. He kissed her like he was trying to breathe his own strength into her lungs. His arms wrapped around her, one hand pressing flat between her shoulder blades, pulling her so close it felt like he was trying to fuse their bodies together. For a moment, the guns and the kidnapping and the rain didn't exist. There was only the heat of him, the solid anchor of his presence. When they pulled apart, Dante kept his eyes closed for a second longer, as if savoring the memory. Then he opened them, and they were clear, focused. "When this is over," he murmured, thumb brushing her lip, "we are going to talk about a future, one that does not involve guns and rival crews. I will find a way out, Maya. If you are waiting for me, I will find a way. I will hold you to that," she whispered. Dante nodded. He stepped back, the mask sliding back into place. He was the Don again. "Let's go." The drive to the docks was a blur of tension. The rain had picked up again, slashing against the windshield of the armored van. Maya sat in the back, surrounded by monitors and radio equipment. She wore a headset, the plastic cold against her ear. Dante was in the lead car. She could hear his voice over the comms, calm and clipped, giving orders to his team. "We are approaching the perimeter," Dante's voice crackled in her ear. "Cut the lights. Silent approach." Maya watched the monitors. The cameras mounted on the cars showed the desolate industrial park. It was a graveyard of rusted metal and crumbling brick. The west docks. The convoy split up. 2 cars peeled off to flank the building. Dante's car continued toward the main entrance of the warehouse she had identified. Maya clutched the edge of the console, her knuckles white. "Target building ahead." Leo's voice came over the line. He was driving the van Maya was in, parked 2 blocks away in a shadowed alley. No sentries visible. "It is a trap," Dante said calmly. "They want us to walk in." "I am going in alone," Dante continued. "Negative." "Boss," Silas argued from the second car. "I go in alone," Dante repeated, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Marco wants a show. I will give him one. Hold the perimeter. Wait for my signal." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. "No, he couldn't go in alone." "Dante," she whispered, forgetting she was on the open channel. "Silence on the line?" Then, his voice, softer. "Stay put, Maya. I will bring him out, on the monitor." She saw Dante's figure step out of the lead car. He was alone. He held his hands up, showing he was unarmed. He walked toward the gaping maw of the dark warehouse, a solitary figure against the massive, looming shadows of the docks. Maya watched him disappear into the blackness, and for the first time that night, the terror truly took hold. The stage was set, the players were in position, and she was stuck in a metal box, listening to the static, waiting for the sound of the first gunshot. The warehouse yard was a vast, open expanse of cracked concrete and weeds, lit only by the harsh, yellow glare of portable floodlights. The air smelled of rust and the coming rain. Dante Rinaldi walked into the center of the light alone. He wore no jacket, only his white dress shirt, which glowed starkly against the darkness. His hands were raised to shoulder height, palms open, fingers spread. He moved with a deliberate slowness, every step calculated to show he was not a threat. Yet, from the shadows of the loading dock, Marco Vargas emerged. He was a younger man than Dante, hungrier with a nervous energy that made him twitch. Behind him stood 4 armed men. To the right, tied to a wooden chair, was Evan. Maya's cousin looked terrified, his face bruised, but he was conscious, his eyes widening as he saw Dante approach. "You look lonely." "Dante?" Marco called out, his voice echoing off the metal siding of the abandoned buildings. "I am here." "Marco," Dante replied, his voice calm and steady. "Let the boy go." Marco laughed, a sharp, grating sound. "You think you are in a position to give orders? Look at you, the king of Greybridge, walking in here with his hands empty because he is afraid we will hurt his girlfriend's family. You've gotten soft. Dante, ever since you picked that girl up off the side of the road, you have lost your edge." 2 blocks away, inside the cramped surveillance van, Maya pressed the headset tighter against her ear. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She heard every word. She heard the sneer in Marco's voice, and she heard the steady, rhythmic breathing of Dante. She closed her eyes. Focusing past the dialogue, she heard a scraping sound. "He's moving his feet," Maya whispered into her microphone. "Evan is dragging his heels. Listen to the echo. It is metallic. He's on a grate." Leo, sitting in the front seat, tapped his earpiece. "Tactical Team Alpha. Target is on the metal ventilation grate. Sector 4. Adjust approach. Back in the yard, the standoff tightened. I want the shipping lanes." "Dante," Marco demanded, stepping closer, "I want the routes through the east side, and I want $50 million transferred to an offshore account by morning." Dante lowered his hands slowly. "That is a lot of money, Marco." "And one more thing," Marco added, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "The girl stays under my watch, just to make sure you do not get any ideas about retaliation. She will be my guest for a few months." Dante went still. The air in the yard seemed to freeze. "No," Dante said. "You do not have a choice." Marco spat. "I have the boy. I have the guns. You have nothing." Dante looked at Marco. Then he did something that confused everyone. He smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile that did not reach his eyes. "I do not have nothing." "Marco," Dante said softly, "I have an exit strategy." "What are you talking about?" "I will give you the territory," Dante said. "You can have the shipping lanes. You can have the east side. But you will not hold them for long." Marco frowned, his gun wavering slightly. "Why?" "Because 10 minutes ago," Dante said, his voice ringing out with lethal clarity, "I sent the full encryption keys from my digital ledgers, and yours, to the federal task force sitting 3 blocks away." Marco froze. "What?" Dante took a step forward. "I gave them everything. Marco, the money laundering, the trafficking, the bribes. I gave them my operation, and I gave them yours. I burned it all down." "You are lying," Marco shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "You would not destroy your own empire." "To save her?" Dante asked. "I would burn the world." He looked up, past the blinding lights, into the darkness. "Now!" Dante roared. Chaos erupted. One of Marco's men, panicked by the sudden shout, fired his weapon blindly. The gunshot cracked through the air like a whip. "Omega!" Dante shouted the code word, diving behind a stack of concrete barriers. Suddenly, the night turned into day. Massive spotlights from the surrounding rooftops snapped on, blinding the men in the yard. Sirens wailed from every direction, a deafening chorus that shattered the standoff. "Federal agents, drop your weapons!" a voice boomed over a loudspeaker. Gunfire erupted, but it was controlled. Precise bursts from the darkness as Dante's hidden tactical team engaged Marco's men. In the van, Maya heard Evan scream through the headset. "Stay here," Leo shouted, grabbing his gear. "Do not open this door." But Maya looked at the monitor. She saw the chaos. She saw Marco's men scattering, running back toward the warehouse where Evan was tied. They were going to use him as a shield. No, she whispered. She didn't think. She didn't weigh the risks. She ripped the headset off and threw open the van door. "Maya!" Leo screamed behind her. She didn't stop. She sprinted down the alleyway, her shoes slapping against the wet pavement. The rain was falling harder now, stinging her face, but she felt nothing but the driving need to get to Evan before it was too late. She burst into the side entrance of the warehouse just as the firefight raged in the yard. The inside was dim, filled with dust and shadows. She saw Evan, still tied to the chair, struggling to tip himself over to hide behind a crate. "Evan!" she screamed. "Maya!" he sobbed. She ran to him, dropping to her knees. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the thick knots binding his wrists. The ropes were coarse, biting into her skin. Come on," she muttered. The rope gave way. Evan gasped, pulling his arms free. "We have to go," Maya said, grabbing his arm. She pulled him up. They turned to run toward the exit and froze. A gunman, one of Marco's enforcers, stepped out from behind a pillar. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, his eyes wild with desperation. He raised his pistol, aiming it straight at Maya's chest. "Don't move," he screamed. Maya shoved Evan behind her, shielding him with her body. She stared down the barrel of the gun, time seeming to slow to a crawl. She braced herself for the impact. Then, a blur of white and black slammed into the gunman from the side. Dante. He tackled the man, driving him into the concrete floor. The gun went off, a deafening bang in the enclosed space. Maya screamed. Dante rolled, coming up in a crouch. He didn't have a weapon, but he didn't need one. He delivered a single, brutal strike to the man's jaw, knocking him unconscious instantly. Dante stood up, swaying slightly. His white shirt was torn at the shoulder, and a dark stain was spreading rapidly across the fabric. "Dante!" Maya cried, rushing to him. She reached for him, but he grabbed her arm with his good hand, his grip like iron. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his voice ragged. "No," she said, tears blurring her vision. "You are bleeding. I am fine," he gritted out. He shoved her and Evan toward a stack of pallets as police lights flashed through the high windows. "Stay down," he ordered. The police swarmed the building a moment later. Men in tactical gear flooded the room, shouting commands. Dante raised his hands slowly, stepping away from the unconscious gunman. He looked at Maya one last time, his eyes filled with a weary relief, before he knelt on the ground and let the officers cuff him. Marco Vargas was apprehended 2 miles away, trying to flee in a stolen car. The intel Dante had provided was flawless. Every safe house, every escape route, every bank account had been flagged. The Vargas crew was dismantled in a single night, but the Rinaldi syndicate fell with it. 3 days later, Maya walked down the sterile hallway of the city hospital. 2 police officers stood guard outside room 304. They watched her approach, checked her ID, and stepped aside to let her pass. The room was dim, lit only by the streetlights filtering through the blinds. Dante lay in the bed, his left arm in a sling strapped to his chest. He looked different without the suit. He looked human, vulnerable. He turned his head as she entered. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp. "You should not be here," he said quietly. Maya didn't answer. She walked to the side of the bed and sat on the edge of the mattress. She reached out and took his uninjured hand in both of hers. His skin was warm. "They say you are testifying," she said. Dante nodded. "The lawyers are working on the deal. I give them the networks in Chicago and New York, and they give me a new life. Witness protection, relocation, and prison time? Some," he admitted, "but reduced. Maybe 2 years, maybe less with good behavior." Silence settled between them. It wasn't awkward, it was heavy with everything they had survived. "I was so angry with you," Maya whispered. "When I left the penthouse, I thought you were the monster." "I am," Dante said, looking at their joined hands. "No," she said firmly. She looked at him, her eyes fierce. "When I got into your car that night in the rain, I thought the danger was the stranger with the gun, but I was wrong. The real danger was how much I would end up needing you." Dante's breath hitched. He looked up at her, and she saw tears gathering in his dark eyes. tears he refused to let fall. "I never thought I could do it," he confessed, his voice rough. "I never thought I could love someone without owning them, without controlling them. I thought that was how love worked. You protect what is yours by keeping it in a cage." He squeezed her hand. "But you taught me. Maya, you taught me that love is being chosen, not obeyed." Maya leaned down. She cupped his face with aching tenderness, her thumbs brushing away the moisture that had escaped his eyes. She kissed him. It was not a desperate kiss, nor a hungry one. It was slow. It was deep. It was full of gratitude and fear and a stubborn, fierce hope. His fingers curled into the back of her hospital gown, gripping the fabric as if he were afraid she would vanish into smoke if he let go. They broke apart, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. "I will wait," she whispered against his lips. "Do not wait," he said. "Live your life." "I will wait," she repeated, pulling back to look him in the eye. "You promised me a future without guns. I am holding you to that." Dante managed a small, tired smile. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Find me," he said. "When it is over, find me." "I will," she promised. 16 months later, the coastal town of Oakhaven was quiet, known only for its jagged cliffs and the gray, churning ocean. It was a place where people went to disappear. Maya walked out of the small grocery store, clutching a paper bag of apples and bread. The sky had turned a familiar shade of charcoal, and a light drizzle began to fall, misting the air. She pulled her coat tighter around herself and started the walk up the hill toward the small cottage she had rented. She liked the rain now. It reminded her of things she didn't want to forget. A car engine purred behind her. Maya didn't flinch. She kept walking. The car slowed, pulling up alongside her. It wasn't a sleek black sedan worth more than a house. It was a modest, dark blue coupe, practical, reliable. The passenger window rolled down. Maya stopped. She turned. Dante sat in the driver's seat. He looked different. His hair was a little longer, softer. He wore a simple gray sweater, not a tailored suit. The hardness around his eyes was gone, replaced by a piece she had never seen before. The scar on his lip was still there, a memory of the life he had burned down to get here. He looked at her, and his smile was soft, a little shy, like a boy on a first date. "Get in," he said, his voice echoing the night that started it all. "I will take you home." Maya didn't hesitate. She didn't weigh the risks. There were no risks left, only the promise. She opened the door and climbed in. She dropped the groceries on the floorboard and leaned across the center console. She kissed him before he could say another word, a kiss that tasted of rain and freedom. Dante laughed against her lips, a sound of pure joy. She pulled back, smiling, and buckled her seatbelt. "Take me home," she said. Dante put the car in gear. As they drove off through the rain, winding along the coastal road, they were no longer a mafia boss and a frightened girl. They were just two people who had walked through the fire, chosen each other, and finally found their way home. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed the journey of Maya and Dante. Writing their story was an emotional ride, and I would love to hear what you thought about the ending. Please leave a comment below telling me where you are listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to Mafia Romance Stories for more tales of dangerous love and redemption. Don't forget to share your thoughts in English in the comments section.